My wealthy dad mocked my military career until the general asked, "That's your daughter." My father built his empire with his hands, his mind, and his complete inability to respect anything he didn't personally create. So when I, Jennifer Mickey, stood across the dinner table at 22 years old and told him I was enlisting in the United States Army, he laughed. Not a small laugh, not a nervous laugh. A full, crystal glass in hand, Bordeaux on the lips laugh that echoed off the 12-foot ceilings of our Connecticut estate and landed in my chest like a verdict. "You're joking," he said. "I'm not." "Jennifer," he set his glass down, slowly. The way powerful men set things down when they want you to understand the conversation is now serious. "I didn't pay for 4 years at Georgetown so my daughter could polish boots and take orders from men with half her intelligence." "You paid for 4 years at Georgetown," I said calmly, "so I could learn how to think, and I've thought about this." He looked at me the way he looked at bad investments, like something that had promised returns and failed to deliver. "Soldiers don't build empires," he said. "They protect them for men like me." I folded my napkin, set it beside my plate, stood up from the table. "Then I suppose, Father, you should hope men like you always have daughters like me willing to do it." I left for basic training 6 weeks later. He did not come to see me off. 11 years. 4 deployments, 2 commendations, 1 Purple Heart I kept in a box in my quarters and never mailed home. Major Jennifer Mickey, United States Army, Special Operations Command. The name that had once made my father gesture dismissively over dinner now appeared in classified intelligence briefings, congressional security reviews, and operational documents that would never see the light of a newspaper. But it never saw the light of his office either, because I never sent it. What existed between my father and me wasn't estrangement, it was something colder. Civility. We spoke at Christmas. He asked about Army things, the way people ask about a hobby they don't understand. I asked about his portfolio. We were 2 people performing family like actors who'd both forgotten they were reading from the same script. He remarried. A woman named Claudette who wore silk and smelled of jasmine and looked at my uniform with genuine curiosity she was too polished to express. His company, Mickey Holdings, expanded into shipping, luxury hospitality, and the kind of quietly powerful government-adjacent contracts that required people in my world to review his people's security clearances. Which I did, once professionally, and never mentioned to him. Because that was who I had become. Someone who operated in the spaces he would never see, doing the work he would never understand, carrying weight he had told me I wasn't built for. He was wrong. I knew it. I had known it for 11 years. But knowing it alone, in the dark, in a forward operating base at 300 hours, with the silence pressing in around you like a living thing, that is a different kind of knowing than the world ever seeing it. I had been waiting, without ever admitting it, for the world to see it. The invitation arrived through official channels. Department of Defense Annual Leadership Gala. Black tie. The Capitol. A room where military leadership and civilian power converged over crystal glasses and carefully worded conversations that moved billions of dollars and shaped national security policy without ever raising a voice. I arrived in my dress blues. Every medal in its proper place. My posture, the kind that stops being a choice after a decade and becomes simply the shape your body takes, cutting a clean line through the gilded ballroom as I entered. I did not expect him to be there, but I should have. The Mickey Holdings logo was printed on the sponsorship banners flanking the east entrance. Of course, my father had purchased proximity to power the way he purchased everything, efficiently, strategically, and without sentiment. He was standing near the bar when I saw him. Silver-haired, patrician, surrounded by men in tuxedos who laughed at the right moments. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had decided, decades ago, that the world would arrange itself around him and had been proven right often enough to believe it permanently. Our eyes met across 40 feet of marble and orchestral strings. He excused himself from his circle and crossed toward me. Jennifer, he kissed my cheek like a press release, warm on the surface, precise underneath. I didn't realize you'd be here. You look. He gestured at my uniform in that way he always had, as though it were a costume I hadn't quite grown into. Very official. Hello, Father. I took a glass of water from a passing server. Congratulations on the sponsorship. Yes, well, this is a significant evening for Mickey Holdings. The defense sector relationships alone represent $38 million in projected annual revenue, I said. I know. I reviewed the security clearance applications for your executive team last spring. The pause that followed was brief, but it was the particular pause of a man recalibrating. Well, he cleared his throat. Good to have family in useful places. There it was. Still, after 11 years and 4 deployments and a Purple Heart in a box. Useful, that's what I was. A resource he could reference at cocktail parties. A name he could leverage when it suited him. I smiled and said nothing. Because I had learned, in places far more dangerous than this ballroom, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. I didn't have to wait long. 40 minutes later, I was deep in conversation with a rear admiral and 2 members of the Senate Armed Services committee near the floor-to-ceiling windows when the room changed. Not loudly. Rooms like this don't change loudly. It was atmospheric, a subtle reorganization of attention, the way iron filings shift when a magnet enters the room. Conversations didn't stop, they tilted. Eyes moved toward the entrance without their owners fully deciding to look. General Marcus Thorne had arrived. 4 stars, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, a man whose career had spanned 5 administrations and whose decisions had reshaped the operational doctrine of the entire United States military. He was not a celebrity. He was something more unsettling than that. He was someone whose choices had consequences that lasted decades and couldn't be undone. He entered the way significant people enter rooms they've already assessed from the doorway, knowing exactly where he was going before he took a step. And he was looking at me. He crossed the ballroom with the economy of movement that belongs to people who have never needed to perform authority because they simply have it. The crowd adjusted around him without quite knowing why. My father had drifted back into my orbit, some animal instinct for proximity to importance, and was standing just off my left shoulder when General Thorne stopped in front of us. Major Mickey. His handshake was the handshake of a man who has shaken hands in field tents and foreign embassies and every altitude in between. Firm, present, genuine. I was hoping you'd be here this evening. I wanted the opportunity to say personally, the intelligence architecture you built for the Kessler operation was some of the most sophisticated strategic thinking we've seen come out of SOCOM in a decade. 9 confirmed lives saved. Likely more we'll never be able to attribute directly. The Kessler operation was classified at a level that meant it did not exist in any room that wasn't cleared for it. I kept my expression composed. Thank you, sir. The team executed it. I just gave them the framework. That is the job, he said, and you did it better than most people I've seen do it in 30 years. He paused. When General Marcus Thorne paused, it meant something was coming. There's a position opening at SOCOM. Strategic Intelligence Director. We need someone who thinks architecturally about threat response. Someone who has been in the field and understands, physically, not theoretically, what these decisions cost the people carrying them out. He held my gaze. We want you, Major. The secretary is prepared to sign off. We'd like your answer before the end of the month. The room, in our immediate radius, had gone very quiet. Then General Thorne's eyes moved to my father with the complete, unhurried attention of a man who misses nothing. I'm sorry. He extended his hand with the same precise courtesy he gave everyone, regardless of rank or net worth. General Marcus Thorne. My father, who had lunched with prime ministers, who had never in his professional life been the lesser name in any room he entered, who had built his entire identity on being the most significant person at any table, straightened with practiced dignity. Gerald Mickey, Mickey Holdings. I'm one of the primary sponsors for this evening's. Mickey, the general's eyes moved between us. Quick, certain, the triangulation of a man who has spent a lifetime reading the relationships between people in the field. That's your daughter. 3 words. That's your daughter. Not a compliment to me, not an insult to him. Just 3 words that rearranged every assumption in the room, and I would later understand in my father as well. Gerald Mickey said, "Yes," in a voice I had never heard from him before. Smaller, careful. The voice of a man who has just realized, without warning, that the ground beneath him is not the ground he thought he was standing on. General Thorne looked at him with the measured, generous respect he extended to everyone. "You must be extraordinarily proud." It was not a question. It was a mirror, held up at close range, with the steady hand of a man who had held many things that were harder to hold. "Major Mickey," the general continued, returning to me, "I'll have my aide contact you Monday. We'll arrange a preliminary meeting with the secretary before anything is formalized." He nodded the particular weighted nod of a man for whom nods are not casual. "Outstanding work. This country is safer because of you." He moved on. The room exhaled, and my father stood beside me, holding his champagne glass with the deliberate steadiness of a man trying not to let anyone see that something inside him had just shifted on its axis. He didn't say anything for a long moment. The orchestra played. People moved around us. The gala continued its elegant, choreographed life. "Jennifer," he said finally. "I know, Father." "No," he turned to me, and Gerald Mickey, this tall, silver-haired, self-constructed titan who had never once in my entire adult life looked anything other than absolutely certain, looked uncertain. He looked like a father, late, trying, afraid he had waited too long. "I don't think I said it correctly. I don't think I said any of it correctly." "You said I was throwing my life away." "I did." "You said soldiers protect empires for men like you." "I did." His jaw tightened, not with arrogance, with the particular grief of a man confronting a version of himself he can no longer defend. "I was afraid. You were walking into a life I had no power in, no leverage, no way to protect you or fix it if something went wrong, and I didn't know how to say that, so instead I said, everything else," I finished. He nodded once. I looked at this man who had built everything from almost nothing, who had translated love into criticism because he didn't speak another language, who had watched me walk toward a world that terrified him and called it foolishness because the truth, that he might receive a phone call one day, a knock at the door, a flag folded into a triangle, was too enormous to carry without it breaking him. "I'm not going to ask you to apologize," I told him. "I want to." "I know, but what I actually want," I paused, choosing carefully, "is for you to understand what it was, not what it looked like from the outside, what it actually was." "Tell me," he said. And so, for the first time in 11 years, standing in a ballroom full of power and crystal and orchestral strings, with 4 stars on the lapel of a man who had just offered me a future I had earned entirely on my own, I told my father who I was. Not to prove anything. Not to win. But because he finally asked. "Here is what I need you to understand." Jennifer Mickey didn't need her father's validation to become who she became. The medals were real before he acknowledged them. The lives saved were real before General Thorne said her name in a room that made her father go quiet. The work was always real. But here is what is also true. The hunger to be seen by the person who first told you that you couldn't, that hunger doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And refusing to let it stop you, refusing to shrink back into rooms that were designed to keep you small, refusing to trade your becoming for someone else's comfort. That is not just strength. That is the whole mission. If this story moved something in you, share it. Someone in your life is standing at their own dinner table right now, being told they're throwing everything away. Someone is folding their napkin, standing up, walking toward the life they chose over the one they were handed. They need to know the general is coming. Share this story, save it, send it to the person who needs it. And if you are Jennifer, if you are the one who left the table and never looked back, keep going. The room always finds out.